It's Miss Margaret live in the morning. I am your host, Miss Margaret. And as you know, this is the show where you're going to get all you need to know, okay? And the headlines were definitely popping this week as it went down at the polls. Now, I was going to say not some of the polls y'all might be thinking of, and I realize it's also 7 a.m. in the morning. It's a little too early to even be talking or thinking like that. But this is me, okay? So y'all already know how it goes, okay? So there is so much that we have to talk about this week. I mean, y'all, I'm sorry, I had a cough drop in. Y'all, I know. You would think all these years that I've been on air, I remember to take something like that off. But it is that season, okay? And I was not going to let any allergies or anything stop me from coming on here and giving y'all the tea, the news. So many states around the nation had their general elections this past week, and we have a lot to talk about because so many of the races were actually being watched around the nation, particularly some that were happening here in the state of Minnesota. Now that I, in my 9 to 5, I work for Ed Allies. Shout out to Ed Allies, okay? We are an ed policy group, which means education policy, which means we make things happen. Okay, we push paper, we push bills, we push policy. And what I know that that means is that you really, in order to like really effectively push policy in your own state, your own neck of the woods, you really have to watch and look and see what people around the nation are doing. Because I guarantee you, there's usually someone who probably already has done what you're thinking of. And so you really have to pay attention. And so there were a lot of people who were looking at races that were going on here. There were a lot of other states, such as Ohio, that had some key races that were going on. New York, which we'll get to. And there were a lot of trials going on this week that you may not have been aware of that have to do with police brutality. If you are watching my social media, which you should, okay. I don't know why you're not, but you should. Okay. Follow my TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, okay, and of course YouTube. Okay. Um, but I saw you may have seen the post I wrote about the case regarding another officer that was acquitted in the murder of Elijah McClain. Also, the trial, the federal civil rights trial going on right now in the case of the murder of Breonna Taylor. And I think it's also regarding her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, as well. There is also, I announced this last week, but I know a lot of people saw it, so I want to make sure y'all saw it again. The family of Shanquella Robinson is actually suing. I was gonna say her 6 friends, but they obviously were not her friends, but the 6 people who she traveled with to Mexico. So there's been a lot going on this week regarding that, and also the Supreme Court had had a hearing going on as well regarding gun laws and domestic violence. So we're going to be getting into all that, and also, it's that time of the year where also we know that seasonal depression kicks in, but also grief really kicks in because we have the holidays coming up. And I was talking to my friends. Shout out to my friends. Okay, you got to have good friends and people you can bounce ideas off of. And I was like, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do for the month of November, content wise, interview wise. One thing I'm definitely learning is to better myself. I done had too many people hit me up talking about they want to be on the show. Then next thing you know, they respond to emails. I ain't got time. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna just talk to y'all from the heart because that's what y'all used to me doing. Okay. And so I was like, I've talked about seasonal depression before. So, I don't really want to keep doing something that I've already done. And I said, maybe, I could talk about dealing with grief during the holidays, because I feel like, during the holidays is when that grief really hits you the most. And so I was like, and now I'm at a point almost 10 years later dealing in my own grief journey where I feel like I can actually come on here and talk to y'all about it. And it's not me like, not practicing what I'm preaching. Okay. So we're going to be talking about different tips and encouragement for dealing with grief. And I am just checking. Okay, I want to make sure I had you. Did you hear me just hearing me? Yeah, I had to make sure y'all could hear me on these other platforms. Okay, so we're going to be talking about that because we've been dealing with a lot of loss here, and particularly the St. Paul community. I mean, it's been just a string of loss of people who truly not only had a large impact, but were people who were really focused on uplifting their communities, uplifting their people. And so I thought, it was definitely a good time to talk about that. And so that leads me actually into our question for the day. Y'all know this is something that I was doing when I was the morning host over at Jazz 88 and giving them all of my talents that they didn't deserve. But anyway, and I know after I left, they kept this question of the day thing. I mean, it's not a new thing, but I'm just saying they wouldn't have done it if I hadn't been in their establishment. Okay. But so our question of the day is, how do you deal with loss during the holidays? Now, this could be the loss of a loved one regarding actual death. This could actually be the loss of a job, because I've dealt with that before, being broke as if during the holidays, and that's stressful. And that also can lead to a lot of heightened depression and anxiety. But how do you deal with that? Drop down in the chat and let us know what you think. Not what you think, but what do you do? What have you done? We're going to be talking about that later on in the episode of what uh different, like I said, tips and encouragement for dealing with the holidays. But feel free to drop down in the chat from wherever you're tuning in from, whether that's Facebook, YouTube. I think that's really all I'm streaming to. Oh, Twitch. Twitch, wherever you're tuning in from. Let us know how you deal with loss during the holidays. Okay, let me take a little sippy sip because we're about to go get into the news. Okay, hold on one second. Doing a morning show is a lot. You be getting parched. You be getting parched. Okay, so like I said, there were so many electoral races that were going on this week that a lot of people had their eye on. One that really shocked the hell out of me was this one right here. So as you see right here, this is actually from, I believe, NPR News. It was NPR, but it's kind of one and the same, honestly. So as you see, it says Minneapolis City Council President Jenkins survived strong election challenge. Now, this is Minneapolis City Council President Andrea Jenkins, and her challenger was Soren Stevenson. So if you are unfamiliar with both, Andrea Jenkins is the first openly Black transgender woman to be elected into official office. And Soren Stevenson is actually, I've met Soren, I've seen him speak at many different rallies and protests and different events. And he actually kind of came his head in the headlines because during the riots after George Floyd was murdered, he actually was shot with a projectile from the police. Like they shoot those rubber bullets. A lot of people think for some reason that that is not as violent as it is. Like, yes, you can clearly, as you can see, get extremely injured, and so he actually lost his eye due to that. And so sometimes I wear a patch. When I met him, he had a patch on his eye, and sometimes he doesn't. And so I honestly, y'all, okay, I'm out here in the burbs. Okay, I'm out here in the burbs. Okay, so I wasn't nothing to vote for out here. These people are running against themselves. I don't know how they doing these burbs. So I really wasn't even paying attention. I was paying attention really closely to the St. Paul races, which we'll get to in a second. But because I'm a St. Paul girl, okay. And so I really didn't even know about this key race until like the day before. Child, I know. How did I not know? Anyways, but so I was like, wow, like, because of knowing Soren and also knowing a lot of the controversy that Jenkins has received since the murder of George Floyd, or really the entire city council of Minneapolis. I actually was going through some old Facebook posts, and I remember I had gone to an event where it went down. It went down between Jenkins and a community advocate. Shout out to Marjan. I don't know why. I don't want to say the last name because I'm blanking, but you know who he is. Y'all know who they are. And they got into it because at the time, this was a conversation about whether or not they were going to reopen the intersection where George Floyd Square is now, which now it is reopened, but it was hanging on to that for the longest. And there was a back and forth because they were basically saying that Jenkins was kind of for it, maybe behind closed doors. I can't remember all that was being said. But I just realized they had made a whole post about it, basically saying that no, they weren't for it and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, and then now there was just the relocation of the new third precinct. So there's been a lot of controversy surrounding her name, but I also feel like there's been times where there are certain attacks that were unwarranted, but that's another conversation for a different day. I know some people in the activist community who might hear me say that know what I'm talking about might be like, what? Yeah, I said it because it's my show. I'm say what I want to say. Anyway, so I when I saw this was a race before the actual election date on Tuesday, I was like, oh, this is gonna be the one to see. When I woke up Tuesday morning, y'all, Soren Stevenson was leading. I was like, what? Like that. Not only is it a big deal for to beat out an incumbent, but they're also the president of the Minneapolis City Council. But also the fact that this is someone who is unapologetic activist whose platform stood on anti police brutality. So let's just go ahead and I'm going to read just a little bit of this article here to give you a little bit more context, even though I kind of really just said it all. But anyway, so it goes on to say that Minneapolis City Council President Andrea Jenkins narrowly defeated challenger Soren Stevenson to retain her 8th ward seat. So Jenkins and Stevenson both fell short of reaching a majority of first choice ballots Tuesday night in the city's ranked choice voting system. Jenkins won by 38 votes in the second round ballot count. And this was confirmed on Wednesday. So remember I told y'all Tuesday morning when I was looking, I was like, oh, wow, Stevenson beat Jenkins. And then a few hours later, my supervisor sent us a group text like, wow, Jenkins pulled it off. I said, what? Okay. And so it goes, what I want to really point out here, the whole point is that this was decided, the difference, I should say, between the loss and the victory was only 38 votes, y'all. 38 votes. Now, all your life you've been hearing kind of the old saying, kind of corny saying, every vote counts. You're like, yeah, whatever, okay? Because there's been a lot of times you probably voted and you didn't feel like it counted, okay? But this is definitely a situation where every vote counts, particularly when you're using this kind of ranked choice voting system, which I'm not gonna lie, y'all, I'm not gonna sit here and explain it because I still really don't understand it. Okay. But just a little bit, like I kind of mentioned this already, but just a little bit more about Jenkins, 62-year-old Jenkins. Let me let y'all know right now, when y'all start writing articles about me, do not put my age. Okay. Do not. Okay, just know I look good. Do not, I don't know why people do that. But anyway, Jenkins has headed the council the previous 2 years, a term that has brought such contentious debates as a rent stabilization policy and the location of a new 3rd precinct police building. So you see, as I mentioned, there's just been a lot. Now, Soren Stevenson, who's 29 years old, now, see, if you're 29, you don't really care about your age. You're not in here. Anyway, ran on a platform of increasing police accountability, promoting affordable housing, and addressing climate change. His run was spurred by an incident in 2020 where he lost his left eye and suffered other injuries after being shot with a police projectile during a peaceful protest following the murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer. So just to give a little bit further context on that, so I went on Soren's Facebook page. I actually just sent him a friend request today. Soren, if you're listening, I need you to answer. Why didn't you answer? Because if you're not, we're going to have a problem. I'm trying to give you your credit and your props. But anyway, like I was saying, I saw that he wrote a long, message that I'm not going to read because it was long as hell. But basically at the end, what I got was basically hinted that he will probably run again in 2025 or something like that. So which I think is good. I mean, if I a lot of times I feel like when people run for the first time in a certain seat, it's that's really the introduction. Like it's not, to me, very common, I don't think, to always win the first time. In fact, I know a lot of people who are now winning their second go around. Shout out to Sarah Jost. I've known her for a long time. She just won her seat in the St. Paul City Council. She ran before, and now is running again, or ran again and now succeeded. Same with Anika Bowie, also in St. Paul City Council. So for him to get this close, talking about Stevenson now and only have a 38 vote difference, I would definitely be running again, because now people know your platform. Now you know how this game really goes. You're more seasoned. You're gonna get it. So congratulations, honestly, to them both, because I don't live in Minneapolis, so I don't necessarily have personal smoke with Jenkins. You know what I'm saying? Why did I say their name like that, Jenkins? You know what I mean? So for me, like I said, I don't really have, I guess, a big stake in this game. Okay, moving on to other big races. This is probably one of my favorite headlines that I've seen this entire week, y'all. Okay, you see how positive we starting off too. I tell y'all, but to come to the show, I want to start off positive more so than negative. This was my favorite headline of the week for sure. So Yusuf Salam, you may be familiar with his name as being a part of the exonerated Central Park Five. It's crazy because when I was reading this particular article from AP News, they phrase it as you see right here: an exonerated Central Park member, as if that's something he signed up for. That was something he had a choice in being a part of. Like, anyway, so. But you know what? We're not going to focus on that, because as you could see, it says will win a seat on the New York City Council. Okay. But really they've won a seat on the New York City Council. Okay. So Salam, who is a Democrat, I can't even talk. Will be representing the Central Harlem district on the city council, having run unopposed for the seat in one of the many local elections playing out across New York State this past Tuesday. And said that he won his primary election in a landslide. And so this victory comes, after 2 decades after DNA evidence proved and overturned or proved that Salam was innocent, along with his other co-defendants, and overturned the convictions of the 1989. I can't really say RAPE because sometimes on YouTube you can't say certain words, and beating of a white jogger in Central Park. I know I saw a statement from him basically saying that he would never. Let me actually find y'all because y'all know I don't like um uh saying stuff, but basically he was saying that this is basically just shows you why you always have to keep the hope, you know what I mean, and that these dreams are not as maybe far-fetched as you think. And so that to see that, you know what I mean, to see someone who I know that was a hard race. I know that was a hard race. And that one honestly made me emotional. It brought tears to my eyes for a second, y'all, because I was like, man, if that's not gonna give you hope to push forward, I don't know what does. Okay. And so moving on to another race that was big. I wonder if my friend from Ohio is still on here. Shout out to OHIO. Okay, OHIO. I know a lot of people around the country were watching this. As you can see, it says here, this is actually from the BBC News. Shout out to the BBC News. When what did I say shout out? Anyway, when I was doing the morning show over at that other station, we started off with the BBC News. And so it's actually, I don't know how they did it, but the BBC News just goes all the time. So I always had to hit a certain button right at like 7:03 to catch the BBC World News Report. And if you didn't hear at that time, they were already in the report. It wouldn't make sense. People wouldn't know what was going on. Anyway, so just a little tidbit what goes into going into running a morning show. So the BBC News reports that voters in Ohio approved adding abortion rights to their state constitution. Okay. And like I said, this was something that a lot of people were watching around the country. I'm going to go into that in a minute. So, actually looking at the article itself, they said the Ohio voters approved a constitutional amendment on Tuesday that ensures access to abortion and other forms of reproductive health care. The latest victory for abortion rights supporters since the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade last year. I ain't gonna lie, y'all, that still shocks me. I don't know why, because this is America. Okay, I really don't know why. It shocks me, but it does. Ohio became the seventh state where voters decided to protect abortion access after the landmark ruling, and was the only state to consider a statewide abortion rights question this year, which is what I was actually going to add, because I was like, I thought they were the only ones this year that had that on the ballot. Now, Lauren Blavelt, I probably pronounced that wrong, co-chair of Ohioans United for Reproductive Rights, stated that the future is bright. And tonight we can celebrate this win for bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. And so it says here that she led that the Ohioans United for Reproductive Rights led support for this amendment. And that statement came from them speaking to the crowd after the victory. So I think that is super dope. Another thing that I read that is not necessarily that is, yeah, I mean, obviously you can't see it here on the screen. But another thing that I read was that other states like Florida, Arizona, and I want to say Missouri were watching closely to this race too. Because if you remember in the beginning of this episode, I said that when you are someone who's trying to figure out, if you're someone who wants to push policy, you want to get active during your next legislative session, you want to make bills and stuff happen, you need to watch what's going on across the country. And so I know these particular states were watching this particular race to see how this is going to play out. So it's super dope. But I know that I saw some other headlines that were saying that, it may not be, it's not, the fight is not quite over yet. So we'll continue looking into more of that. I didn't have time to look more into what they meant, but I know I got my girl on here in the comments who is from Ohio. So let me know what you think about this. What has the climate been in Ohio regarding this particular issue? What are things that you may be hearing from people from Ohio who are back home on their thoughts about this. Um, and another thing that happened in Ohio that I'm just gonna pop up here just cause. Okay, they didn't got it together. They didn't got it together. I don't know. Okay, for those who might be listening to this maybe later on in podcast form, what I'm talking about is Ohio has legalized. Now, why did I start coughing during this headline? Child, if that wasn't on topic. Ohio just legalized cannabis. Okay. Now you see in this headline it says now comes the hard part. We're not going to focus on that because I ain't really got time. We only got so much time to talk about all these headlines. But the main thing that I wanted y'all to focus on, I just really wanted to throw out that tidbit. I feel like slowly but surely a lot of states are realizing that you a fool if you don't legalize just for business purposes. Minnesota finally got together. I wish we would get it together with these dispensaries, but I know that it takes like 12 to 18 months to get a license. I don't know. So I don't know how that works with dispensaries that we already had who sell, low dosage THC. They ain't gonna do nothing to for you. But I need us to hurry up on that. So anyway, so shout out to Ohio. Okay, OHIO. We are gonna take a quick break, okay, because I gotta drink something. Okay, I need to drink my little tea. I'm gonna go up here and put our question of the day back up here for you guys to sit with a little bit. And actually, you know what? I have a response before I take a break because as you see up on the screen, I said, how do you deal with loss during the holidays? And I see a commenter right here. Shout out to Suitcase Cast. Okay. It say, I try to give back to others, even if it's just volunteering at a shelter. It just feels good to help others. I'm so glad you said that because that is one of the things I will be talking about later on in the episode when we talk about ways to deal with grief and loss during the holidays. And particularly that's something that is really recommended for especially people where if you're feeling very alone during the holidays, if you maybe you don't have anyone to celebrate with, you don't have a table to sit at, what have you, going, and I know a lot of people will go and serve food at shelters and find a lot of community that way. I know Tiffany Haddish talked about how every Thanksgiving she always serves food at a shelter because she knows what it's like to be without and to not have that family unit around her. So we're going to take a quick break. No matter where you're chiming in from, make sure you drop down in the chat and let us know where you're chiming in from. And as I mentioned, I'm going to take a quick break, but I'm going to leave this question of the day up here, which is how do you deal with loss during the holidays? And I'm going to try to make it quick because, I know I'm streaming on Facebook, and Facebook sometimes be tripping when you play a little music. But Facebook, I done said I don't own the rights to this dang on music. Okay, I don't know. I don't. We won't even go into a conversation about rights and ownership. Okay, but I don't own the rights to this thing on this music. It's background music. It ain't harming nobody. It's cleared through StreamYard. Take it up with them, not me. Okay, but we're gonna be right back. All right, and we are back. You are tuned into Miss Margaret Live in the morning. And if you are just tuning in right now, make sure you drop down in the chat from wherever you are tuning in from and let me know where you're tuning in from. Okay, are you tuning in from Minnesota, my home state? Are you tuning in from Nashville, my other home? You might be tuning in from LA. Okay, you could be tuning in from anywhere around the world, honestly, because if you know me and my history, then you know that people tune in from me from everywhere. Okay. And if you missed the headlines, we were just talking about a lot of the big races that were going on around the country this week. We were talking about the race that went down right here in the state of Minnesota, the Minneapolis City Council race. Okay, where Andrea Jenkins, the Minneapolis City Council president, narrowly pulled through. Only a difference of 38 votes between her and her challenger Soren Stevenson. We also talked about the race that went down in Ohio where they approved adding abortion rights to their state constitution. My favorite headline of all of those was the one, right? Let me pull it up. Let me pull it up. Okay, because this deserves a picture. This deserves a picture. Boom. Y'all see that? Y'all see that? You see I'm getting better at this. You see I'm getting better at this. And make sure you're tuning in. Jot down in the comments. Make sure you let me know you can hear me. Okay. Let me know you can hear me. Because I don't know, Facebook might be hating, might have muted me for some reason. Okay. So let me know if you can hear me. But this one right here, Yusuf Salami is one of the Central Park Five, and he won his seat on the New York City Council. And that one, when I saw the day before that race was going down, I'm like, oh my God, please let him win. And I had a part of me that was like, he gonna win. But y'all, it's America. It's America. You never know. You never know. But New York is they well, I ain't from New York, so I'm not gonna speak on them. But anyway, so I was really extremely happy to see this, and we starting off with some positivity. Okay, this morning. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier on in the episode, I said that there were a lot of there's a lot going on government wise this week, honestly. As you can see here, I really want to talk about this today because this may be something that you all don't know about because I didn't realize it was going on until I was, doing what I do for y'all, go through the dang on headlines. So as you can see, this article right here, I'm not even gonna lie, I can't remember where I got this. This is NPR, I believe. And it says High Court seems likely to uphold law banning guns for accused domestic abusers. So I'm going to go ahead and read um straight from straight from the source, basically. Okay. um the Supreme Court, this is yeah, anyway, let me just read this thing. I don't know why I'm getting tripped up. The Supreme Court, it states here, the Supreme Court seemed likely Tuesday to preserve a federal law that prohibits people under domestic violence restraining orders from having guns. In their first guns case since last year's expansion of gun rights, the justices suggested that they will reverse a ruling from an appeals court in New Orleans that struck down the 1994 ban on firearms for people under court order to stay away from their spouses or partners. The court's decision could affect other cases in which other gun laws have been called into question, including in the high-profile prosecution of Hunter Biden. President Joe Biden's son has been charged with buying a firearm while he was addicted to drugs, but his lawyers have indicated that that really ain't got nothing to do with nothing. I really just want to bring forth this headline right here. And really, this is something that um I'm going to do a more kind of in-depth reporting on, to be quite honest. Because as you see, this is very layered here. And I'm trying to actually go back here so I can pull up kind of more on that article. But I thought that was definitely something that just kind of, here we go, just kind of like breezed past, and that's something that we should be watching. So let me pull this up here. And this is actually a different article that I'm reading here, so it's not particularly um uh you know this article that you see here on the screen. Sorry, y'all, I got tripped up for a second. But this is actually one from CBS News, and it says the follow-up from the Supreme Court's landmark Second Amendment decision handed down last year was on display this past Tuesday when the justices weighed a high-stakes case that pits the right to bear arms against a federal law that seeks to protect victims of domestic violence by keeping guns away from their alleged abusers. Arguments in the dispute were the first heard by the court since its conservative majority imposed a new test for assessing whether a firearms restriction passes constitutional muster, which has sparked confusion and frustration among the nation's federal judges as they navigate new challenges to long-standing laws. Now, General Elizabeth, I think it's Prelogger. I'm sorry, y'all. This first time I've seen the name. Okay, y'all let me know if I said it wrong. Who represents the government before the Supreme Court urged the justices to correct what she said was the profound misreading of their June 2022 decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, which has had destabilizing consequences and led to the invalidations by lower courts of widely accepted gun restrictions like those disarming convicted felons. Basically, the main thing I want y'all to focus here is the first part where it says that this past Tuesday the justices weighed in on this and basically the right to bear arms against the federal law that seeks to protect victims of domestic violence by keeping guns away from their alleged abusers. As someone who has had to file a restraining order against someone, this is definitely something that when I saw this, even like the reason why I read two articles is because it is kind of confusing when you first read about it and hear about it. And like I said, as someone who has had to go through that process and has dealt with the PTSD and all of that, this is definitely something that was something that I definitely wanted to watch. So it's definitely something that we're going to keep an eye on. And I'm going to do I think I'm going to do a separate video and post on my YouTube with some more in-depth reporting on that. But that was kind of just something that I just wanted to kind of be like something for y'all to go, yeah, I definitely want to keep my eye, on that and see how all that plays out. Okay, so we are moving on to another trial that was going on this past week. And let me pull this up here. Many of you may not have realized that as I mentioned, there are a lot of trials that have been going on this week regarding police brutality, right? And so we know that while there may not have been no one was charged in the murder of Breonna Taylor, we now have there now is the civil rights trial, which is federal civil rights trial, which is basically them deciding whether or not the police officers violated her civil rights. And I also believe it has to do with also violating Kenneth Walker, her boyfriend's civil rights also. So as you can see here, this is an article from AP News, and it says former Louisville officer charged in Breonna Taylor raid says, oh, Jesus Christ, he was defending fellow officers. Y'all, it's hard for me to even read this, okay? Because it just, when you read these things, you're just like, this is just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, but let me go on to the article and then I'll add my little tidbits, okay? Because y'all didn't come here for me to be signed and stuff. Or maybe you did. Of course, wherever you're from, drop down the chat. Let me know where you're listening from. Okay, I see some people are tuned in. Let me know where you're listening from. And also, while I'm doing this, let me know your thoughts and stuff in the comments. Okay, let me know what you're thinking. I want to know what you're thinking in the comments about all this stuff. Okay, so AP News reports that the ex-Louisville police officer on trial for firing into Breonna Taylor's apartment the night she was killed testified this past Thursday that he had to react quickly after a fellow officer was shot in the leg during the drug raid. Brett Hankison said, who's the person here in this picture, said that he saw a muzzle flash come from inside Taylor's hallway after officers knocked down the door in the early hours of March 13, 2020, to execute a search warrant. He testified he believed it sounded like an assault rifle, so he moved to the side of Taylor's apartment and fired shots in through a sliding glass door and window. Okay, well, you know what? Let me keep going because y'all see I'm trying to stay on point. Hankinson said to the U.S. District Court on Thursday, I had to react. I had no choice. Now, Taylor's boyfriend had fired a single shot at the officers after they came through the door, and two officers at the entry returned fire, striking, killing Taylor on the hallway of her apartment. Now, we know, as we've been watching this trial over the years, that we've heard multiple times, the boyfriend said that he did not know that it was the police. There's been a lot of back and forth with witnesses on whether or not they heard the police announce themselves or not. But one of the things that was, and I'm gonna say this part because there's another article where I saw that I can't remember who it was. Some other officer was saying they were shocked by Hankinson's behavior, basically that he just fired with no target, not really knowing what the heck was on the other side of the dang on door. I'm thinking, how many times have you been shocked by his behavior before? Because with these officers, this is never the first time. This is the time they got caught. or you know what I mean? I actually saw, I can't remember, not too long ago, but there was like some report. I want to say it was like New York police officers. Y'all, I think I was watching My True Crime Story, child. It was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of reports of police brutality. And like maybe like, I don't even want to say 2% of them actually had any type of consequences. So, you know, I could take some time and look more into their record, and I might do a little Miss Margaret Live investigates on some of these stories. And so this goes on to say that, well, you know, that now this says while no one was hit by the 10 shots he fired, allegedly, prosecutors have argued Hankinson was shooting erratically, without identifying a target. Some of his gunshots went into an unoccupied neighboring apartment. The officer, you know, he says that he moved away from the entry door, rounded the corner of the apartment. And, you know, we're not going to go into more because it's really just too even traumatizing to keep going on with this story. But so this is something that is going on right now. So just to be clear, these officers are not on trial as they should be as far as being charged with the murder of Breonna Taylor. This has to do with there's civil rights case. This is something that we see happen a lot, unfortunately, with a lot of these cases where if they can't get them excuse me, actually indicted, um, but then they have these trials where they can, you know, go to trial for their civil rights. Now, this is not to say though that, you know, these trials don't come with heavy consequences. Will they face the heaviest? Probably not. But I do want to say that Hankinson, who was 47, has been charged with 2 federal civil rights violations for endangering Breonna Taylor, her boyfriend, and their neighbors. He faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. We're gonna see how this plays out. He need to get, listen, they need to get all the time. I need to be under the dang on jail. I don't even know why we got to even see their faces at this point, to be honest with you. But it is what it is. So that's something that I will definitely be following up with for you guys. We'll be keeping a watch on that for sure. And actually, you know what? I had decided just to kind of turn our attention real quickly back to our question of the day. Now that I have more people chiming in, I know more people start chiming in closer to 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. That's why I try to start this at 8 o'clock. I don't know. Anyway, but I gotta get my kid to school. So, you know, he got a late start. Anyway, so um the question of the day we're talking about is how do you deal with loss during the holidays? And, you know, I mentioned earlier, we've had so many losses recently in the past few months, really big losses that have impacted like the community, particularly here in St. Paul, particularly the Black community here in St. Paul as a whole. And so I know there are a lot of people who are dealing with different levels of grief right now. And it could be grief from years past. It could be grief of someone who just passed. There's a book. Let me look it up right now because I had actually bought it, which is like, why I gotta look it up? Don't judge me. Okay. But the book is called It's Okay to Look at me spelling out to not be okay. Typing it out on my phone. And I think that's, or maybe I think that's what it's called. Or is it called? Yeah, here it goes. It's called It's Okay That You're Not Okay. That's what it is. It's okay that you're not okay. And this book is by Megan Devine. And so I really recommend this book for people who have recently lost someone. When I read the book, I was kind of I was at a point where this has been years and I'm just now dealing with the grief. This is a really good book, I feel like, for people who are really in those beginning stages. And it has good tidbits all along. One thing that I like about it too is it just acknowledge the fact that it's okay to be angry about it. You have a right to be angry and to sit, you know, in those feelings and process that through and out. So I want to just bring that up while we are on the topic. But so chime in. How do you deal with loss during the holidays, wherever you are tuned in from? Let us know in the comments. So I am going to, you know, we're going to be talking about like I said, a lot of different trials that are going on this week in cases. You know what? Actually, we can go ahead and get into this one. So you all know this, are familiar with this beautiful face, Shanquella Robinson. She is the 25-year-old woman who had traveled with her friends to Mexico last October. It's actually, yeah, just past a year, not too long ago. And she was traveling with, I don't want to say friends because they obviously were not her friends. And her body was found severely injured, shortly after that, the next day, and her friends originally, oh, these people had originally said that she had it was alcohol poisoning, but really it was there was you know a physical assault that took place, and then the video had leaked that we all saw all around the internet of Shanquella being brutally assaulted. And while these folks who she was with had initially said that it was alcohol poisoning, autopsy in Mexico discovered that she had a severe neck and spinal cord injury. And so I had mentioned this a little bit last week. I just want to mention in case anyone missed it that her family is suing those 6 individuals who she traveled with. Her the family's lawyer, Sue Ann Robinson, who you may recognize from Ready to Love. I know some people might be like, really, Margaret? Listen, that's how I first saw her. Okay. And I know they said that she was a lawyer, but I was definitely not expecting when I saw that she was a lawyer for this. I was like, oh, I know you was this type of lawyer. Okay, big time. Anyway, she said in a statement to Newsweek that the lawsuit would be against the 6 travel mates, including the 3 who lied by omission, by failing to disclose that someone had been beating Shanquella prior to her death. The thing that really pisses me off, several things that piss me off about this, is that I also read that the United States, well, I guess we knew this, but the United States, failed to press charges, which is crazy to me because they say they don't have enough evidence. But I mean, I think a lot of us would agree that they have enough evidence. I know that I also read that the autopsy that was conducted in Mexico said that was what I was referring to, and they said she had the neck and the spinal injury. However, I guess the autopsy here that was done in the United States said that her death was undetermined. Now, you already know when it comes to Black women and getting justice, it's already very hard to come by. So, but I know that their lawyer said that, that this is not over. They're not deterred. It doesn't mean that charges can still not be, pressed on the federal level here over in the States. But that's where we're at right now. So I definitely want to bring this to your attention. Oh, God. As I'm getting to this part of the conversation, it's like, it just gets the injustices of this country are just completely exhausting. And there's so many layers to this. There's the brutality of this young Black woman, that just is just disgusting on so many levels. There's the lack of protection of Black women. If watching that video and just seeing the video go down, she's not even fighting back. She's not doing nothing to this girl. I don't to this day, I don't think we even know why the assault took place. I mean, let me know if you know something different. But I don't know where the assault took place. Not where, why. We still don't really know why, what the logistics are about it. And so it's just really, the whole thing is just tragic and heartbreaking. And so I would definitely be following up on this, digging into what I can more into this story. So make sure when I post these in-depth, like more reports and stuff, that y'all tune in. Okay, support, run it up, so we can keep on telling these stories that they don't really want to be told. And like I said, you might be thinking like, okay, you said you giving us headlines that you may not see. I guarantee y'all didn't see some of these headlines that I just talked about, because there's so much to talk about. But even with these, there were definitely some stories about it, but not enough, not enough talk about it. So I definitely want to make sure that I talked about it here, okay, on my platform. Wrapping this up with another kind of update, a disappointing update. If you recognize this young handsome face right here, it is the face of Elijah McClain. So Elijah McClain was 23 years old. He was killed in Aurora, Colorado back in 2019. Now, this is one of those cases that was really kind of, I think, swept under the rug, obviously intentionally, as many police brutality cases are. And it really came back to light after the murder of George Floyd, as hundreds and hundreds of cases came to light. That was one of the things that I think people, especially white folks, were shocked. But even myself, living here in the state of Minnesota, where so many of these cases have happened, didn't even realize how much had happened. And just how often it's been happening. And I also think too, in certain ways, at least here, you kind of start to become a little numb to it and almost desensitized, which is really sad because I always talk about. I remember when George Floyd was killed, and at first it was reported as a medical emergency or something like that. It definitely wasn't. This officer killed him, and so I think it was one of those things like, see, just here we go, and felt like almost like there was nothing we could do about it. But the people said otherwise, and y'all saw what happened. We lit this place up. So anyway, a second officer has been acquitted, okay, on charges related to the death of Elijah McClain. Oh, I don't think I went off the story. So Elijah McClain, like I said, is 23 years old. He was a massage therapist. Some a-hole called the police. He was just walking, minding his business in a neighborhood, and someone called the police saying that there was a suspicious person. Being black for a lot of people is just suspicious, period. You know what I'm saying? Oh, they black, they suspicious. And that's what happened here. Someone said he had a ski mask. I have yet to read a report that said he actually had on a ski mask. So these officers approached him. This officer who I'm about to talk about right here is one of the first to approach him. They forced him to the ground. He told them multiple times while on the ground that, he couldn't breathe. I believe he was crying. He was vomiting. He even apologized for vomiting on these jerks. And they put what the thing that really led to his couple of things that really led to his death was they put him in what they call a carotid hold. That's CAROTID. Okay, for those who are like, what'd you say? A carotid hold. And what it basically cuts off the blood flow circulation, to the brain. And so it rendered him unconscious. And then for some crazy reason, they then injected him with ketamine, which I don't even know why they decided to do that. This is after he's already been in this hole. He's on the ground. He's not attacking them. He's not assaulting them. He doesn't even know why they're talking to him, period. You know what I mean? And then they decide to inject him with this sedative, and then that is what led to his death several days later in the hospital. And so this officer by the name of Nathan Woodyard is the second officer now, as I mentioned, who's been acquitted on these charges. And I saw that, well, one, I want to state here that this article, I don't even know what this was in. We'll just say AP News. That this verdict happens after a recent split decision by another Colorado jury in an earlier trial involving the officers, the same encounter where one officer was convicted, but another one was acquitted. And so it's just, it's when I put in my YouTube video, I think I titled it "Damn Shame" because it is a damn shame. It's a shame that this happened. I saw some article where it said that this officer was crying. Honestly, they always want to cry. I guess I saw something that said that he cried like shortly after, maybe like on the EMTs or whatever, when they were taking Elijah away, that he was like, "Oh my God," basically like, "I think that I murdered him." And so, or I think the words they used, he wasn't going to make it. Okay, I'm sorry. And so it's just, I don't think, can I say murder on YouTube? But we're gonna find out. MURDER. Okay. And it's just a damn shame. It's just a damn shame. So I believe this is still playing out as far as these trials and stuff like that. And so it's another one that was happening this past week. So as I said, there has been a lot. Okay, there has been a lot going on this past week. So I'm going to take a quick break. I mentioned in the beginning of this report that that we were going to be talking about dealing with grief during the holidays, and I want to start this as close to the 8 o'clock hour as I possibly can because that's what I advertised it for. Because this time of year, of course, is when sad, seasonal depression kicks in. And for a lot of us, particularly if you live where I live, okay, if you live up in the Midwest, up north, where it's getting colder in addition to getting darker early, baby, I don't know how people in Alaska do it. Okay. And so then it's really starting to kick in. And then the holidays is really the time where I believe that loss and that grief really becomes apparent the most, right? There's a lot of times where, during the holidays, there's some people, family members, who you only see during those times. And so those are the times when you really start thinking about if only this person was here, you start getting the anxiety approaching the holidays. And so I thought it was a good time to talk about this. I've been saying we're going to talk about grief and tackling it. I'm finally in a place in my life where I can even come on here and give y'all tips that I know I'm actually using, okay? Because I be practicing a lot of stuff. I don't be preaching. No, I be practicing what I preach. Okay, anyway, don't judge me. So, what I'm going to do, okay, we're going to go back here to our question of the day, which is how do you deal with loss during the holidays? Okay, how do you deal with that? How have you dealt with that? Have you lost? And like I said, we're talking about grief particularly, but this also could be loss of a job, okay, loss of a house. You know what I mean? Um, all type of things. And I done been to the point where I done lost a lot. I done lost, had to leave, move out of my apartment. I lost my car because I had lost my job. It was like a ripple effect. Job, living situation, car gone. And I'm grateful to God that one, I had my mom who is an amazing, amazing, amazing support system and has allowed me to be at her headquarters while I got back on my feet after going through so much the turmoil with, like I said, there's been in this job market, and now I'm in this place where I'm blessed to be in. But so I know what it's like to have a lot of loss happen, and then you have the holidays coming up, and so much that goes into that. So how do you, for those who are listening right now, let us know where you're tuning in from. How do you deal with loss during the holidays? How do you deal with it? What have you done? What do you think are maybe some things that you haven't done, but you've seen other people do? We help each other out here on this show. So as I take a quick little break, so I can get parched, because when you be running your mouth, oh child, it'd be a lot. Leave you with a little music, okay? Facebook, I do not own the right to this turn on music. Okay, I don't know these rights, okay? And we will be right back. All right, and we are back. It's Miss Margaret live in the morning. If you just tuned in, we are just wrapping up our headlines for the week. You can definitely catch the headlines. It will be on my YouTube channel, and I'll post them throughout the week on my different social media platforms. So you don't have to worry. Okay, I got you covered. So as you can see right here, our question of the day, it says, how do you deal with stress during not stress? How do you deal with loss during the holidays? And we're particularly today talking about dealing with grief, right, during the holidays, because during the holidays is really when grief tends to set in the most. It's really the time you are really reminded that the loved one is no longer is not here. And a lot of times, like as I mentioned before, grief or during the holidays, there are a lot of people who you maybe only see that those couple times per year at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and at the time when people gather and families and the closest people to you. And so it's really when the grief, I feel, hits hardest the most. And so as someone who has really been dealing with that, as if you were new to me and my show, then you may not know, I've talked about grief a lot. My anxiety and all that really set in after the passing of my aunt. She passed away in February of 2014. And my mom, my aunt raised me, so it's something that I still deal with actively to this day. And when you suffer a big loss like that, nothing really is ever completely the same. And so I've gone through so many holidays now where last Christmas I finally made a decision that I was going to just focus on just kind of just going with how I felt, going with the day, going with the flow, and not putting pressure that I have put on myself in the past to make the day perfect and have a good day and da 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 da, because it never usually works out in the end. So if you are watching online, then you can see I have this article here, because y'all know I always like to give you references. Okay, now I'm gonna be real though. A lot of the stuff that I'm about to say, I said without this article, okay, but I like to back myself up. You know what I'm saying? Like make sure people are like, she just talking, she just talking. Yeah, I'm talking, but because look, this is expert opinion stuff too. Okay. So anyway, but then again, obviously going through this what makes you the expert, if you're being clear. Okay. Okay. And if you missed it earlier, I mentioned there's a book out there called It's Okay If You're Not Okay. The author is Megan Devine. I think it's a good book if you are dealing with very, very recent grief. From recent loss. So one of the first things that I will say as far as dealing with grief during the holidays, I kind of wish I had different slides to put up here instead of this. But anyway, um, one of the things that I know now is a lot of times I think of grief kind of as a tunnel, right? And it's like that old saying goes, the cliche, look. I can't even say it. The what? The cliche say. As the cliche saying goes, there's light at the end of the tunnel, okay? And and I know, it's always like, yeah, yeah, I know. But the thing about the light and the tunnel is, of course, you have to go through the tunnel. You know what I mean? You can't just look through the tunnel and try to see the light. You can't go around it. You have to go around it. You can, but it's always, finding other obstacles you got to deal with instead of just going through it. And I was actually driving through a tunnel yesterday, and I was thinking about this, and I was thinking how, when you are about to approach a tunnel, it's like, oh, you start, at least for me, I started feeling really anxious. Tunnels make me feel anxious, make me feel claustrophobic, make me think of Princess Diana. Which I know some people might be like, Jesus Christ, Margaret, that's what I think of. Make me think of it's just a lot of noise. It's just a lot going on. And so there's always that part of me that goes like, here we go. And while I'm in that tunnel, it just seems like a whirlwind, right? And then I start seeing the sun, the light at the end of the tunnel. I starting to feel relief. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. And then I come out of that tunnel and I'm like, whew, okay. I got through it. Now I can breathe again. Now I can see again. I feel like that's what dealing with and processing and managing grief is like. When you're so anxious and terrified to even have to deal with it and go through it, because what is going to happen to me in that tunnel? Am I going to make it out on the other side? But then when you do, you're like, oh my God, whew, thank God. Okay, that's over. Now I'm good. And so that's kind of the metaphor I want you all to hang on to today. Is that dealing with this is really like that. And so my first, really kind of tip and piece of advice is when you're dealing with grief, to allow yourself to one that it's okay to not be okay. Another cliche kind of saying, but also to allow yourself sit in that grief. When the first holidays that we had after Auntie passed, which was Thanksgiving and Christmas, it wasn't like there was a conversation of, okay, so this is how this is gonna be different this year. We won't have the sweet potatoes or the salads, this year. We won't have that presence. There was no talk about what the difference was and how to get through it. It was just this holidays coming up. My mom was gonna be cooking. Brandon, at that point was just over a little bit over a month old. You know what I mean? And I was with his dad so at the time. So we were just having Thanksgiving together. I think he had to work that evening. So it was just almost kind of business as usual, but it wasn't. And it wasn't until when I think back on those days though, where how it really played out, where even though we did the cooking and the eating, it was very quiet. It was dark. You know what I mean? There was definitely something really missing. And then the years passed, I think, subconsciously I always tried to make up for that, like trying to get that spark back, and putting a lot of that pressure on myself really ended up really hindering those holidays. So much pressure and so much trying to overcompensate now for the void and trying to make it perfect so that you don't feel that void and that grief really just ended to kind of, I think, my body burning out. You know what I mean? And me feeling it harder anyway than I would have if I would have just been like, you know what? Today, like I'm gonna feel how I feel, and that's okay. Yeah, it's Thanksgiving, it's Christmas, but I'm not the happiest today. This is a whole new territory, a whole new life, right? But I didn't know that I need to do that. I didn't have someone tell me to do that. So that's why I'm sharing this here with y'all today. So the first thing is, like I said, you have to go through that tunnel. You have it's and it's gonna it can suck. Grief sucks. I'm not gonna hold you. I'm not gonna sugarcoat. It sucks, right? And it's something that you feel sometimes when you're really in the deep throes of it that you're never going to get out of it, which you will get to that other side. And so knowing that during these days, when you're dealing with that it's okay to acknowledge that, today, like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not okay. I'm not, this Thanksgiving is, I wanted to feel like this, but I don't. And to sit in that and to let your body process it through it, journal it out, scream it out, cry it out, get it out, however you need to. Because once you do that, then you really free up that space to actually be more present in that moment and maybe start to kind of enjoy the environment that is around you. Um, I've already kind of said this and kind of being redundant now, but as I said, like, sit in that when you have those moments, and this is during the holidays or not, you really do have to sit in that grief. Sit in that grief when you feel it. Don't try to run from it. Don't focus on just, oh, let me just pull it together. Let those tears come out. Let that acceptance that they're not here come out. That is one of the hardest parts, are the moments when you realize and accept that they're not coming back. Even when I say that, it's a feeling that goes through my body. You know what I mean? That, yeah, I'm still struggling with that. I understand now when some people say, I'm still expecting this person to walk through that door and they've been gone for 20 years. You know what I mean? Sometimes I think it's almost maybe a survival tactic to be in that kind of state of denial. And so accepting that things are not the same, um accepting that this person is gone, a lot of those things I think just allow you to break down those doors to then let a lot of that healing and stuff come in. And also, another thing I would say is, to release the pressure of trying to make the present the past, right? Releasing that pressure of trying to make now these new holidays and these new experiences with all this loved one or loved ones, um the pressure of trying to make it as if it was like the presence was still there. And I've said that before, the times when I really put the pressure on myself to be happy, the pressure on myself to be joyous. Me and my mom, we grieve very differently. We are very different, just in personalities. I'm a Capricorn, she's Sagittarius, okay? Um, and so I think not only was I trying to make the present the past, but also comparing my grief to someone else's grief, who I feel like is dealing with it better. What they're able to show up and still be joyous. They're able to still be in the Christmas, spirit. They're able to want to do this and that. Why can't I do that? And then pushing myself to try to be like that instead of what I now know that is okay, to acknowledge that I'm not that. And everyone grieves differently. We don't all grieve, at the same time. And so those are a couple key comparisons too, like, or things that I want to say as far as when it comes to the pressure. So releasing that pressure to make the present the past, and releasing that pressure to grieve like someone else. So we've gone through a few things now, right? We've gone through talking about that tunnel. What it's like, what a lot of times when you're in that grief, right? And having to go through that tunnel, that anxious feeling that, like, it just feels like a whirlwind. I can't even think straight, hear straight. I just want to get out of this. Okay. Getting out to the other side, knowing that you're gonna come out of that other side, really knowing that it's okay if you don't feel okay. It's okay if you don't want to celebrate Thanksgiving, if you don't want to celebrate Christmas, if you don't want to celebrate Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever it is. There's so many holidays. I'm not just talking about even the Christmas season. Um, it's okay if, like, I want to do it this year. I don't. And there might be people who will say, "Oh, you should. It'll make you feel better." Listen to your heart. Listen to your gut. And maybe that day, maybe you might feel like it, right? But it's okay to be like, I don't want to do it this year. I'm not. And giving yourself that grace that self-love, setting those boundaries is something that you really had to do when it comes to grief. So we've talked about going through the tunnel, talking about knowing that it's okay, that you're not okay. It's okay if you're like, I don't feel like celebrating. It's okay if during that actual holiday and you're like, I'm trying so hard to be happy and blah, blah, blah. And now I feel like I'm just crashed, this moment of grief, that it was okay. Sit in it, process it, journal it out, scream it out, call a friend, whatever you got to do, get that out, because that's how you're going to be able then to let in that healing and that calm and that comfort. We also just talked about releasing the pressure of comparing the present to the past, right? Releasing the pressure of trying to make this upcoming holiday, whether it's a birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, it could be the Chinese New Year, the Ethiopian New Year. There's so many the holidays that are coming up. Um, Releasing that pressure to make all of that as it was when that person was here, or how you think it would feel as if that person was here, and just really kind of being in what it is right now in the moment. And I think too, um it's okay as well, if you can, to have a conversation, which can be hard, especially if you're newer in the grief, but have a conversation with your family, whatever, of okay, how are we going to process this? This is the reality. How is everyone feeling? You know what I mean? And do that check-in and kind of get that buy-in of that support of how can we go through this together? If you have people around you who are also dealing with that loss of that loved one, or people who you feel like can support you through that. Another thing that's so key when it really comes to, I think, just any type of healing and work that you're doing to heal, um is to not only to give yourself grace, but give yourself the grace and the love that you feel that that loved one would be giving to you if they were still here, right? When I think of my aunt, I already know she was never one to want to see me sad, upset, cry. And so a lot of times I had to, it sounds so corny. People say they wouldn't want to see you sad, but I like, when you think of it in a genuine way, like, right, they wouldn't want to see you sad. And so I think, giving yourself that grace, that love, how, if they were here, would they be loving on you? And apply those measures to yourself. Another thing, and this really kind of goes back to the thing of releasing the present from the past. Two great things, of course, is one is always still carrying on those traditions from when they were here, whether it's a decorating the tree type of thing, whether it's a certain dish that they always made, carrying on those traditions. Now, auntie, she always made sweet potatoes for Thanksgiving. I've never been a big sweet potato person. There ain't never gonna be a time where you're gonna see me really asking for sweet potatoes and nobody's soul food buffet line, nobody's Thanksgiving, nothing. Okay, but if they're done right, I like them. Okay. So, sweet potatoes was never something that I was asking for, but I thought about bringing it back this year. Actually, Auntie's big thing was salads and sweet potatoes. Now, her salads were fire. Sweet potatoes, but the salads, okay. And we used to always have people over for Thanksgiving too, different like friends or people who didn't have people to celebrate with for Thanksgiving. We would have them over, okay. And them salads were lit. Now, when I was younger, I was not here for it because no kid wants to sit there and eat a salad. You want to get to the mac and cheese and everything else, okay. But salads were her thing. So I thought about bringing that back, and I thought about even asking my friend to ask her friend to make some sweet potatoes, because her sweet potatoes were fire. I don't remember where my friend got this catering from, somewhere here in the Twin Cities. And I was like, now if I can get her sweet potatoes, oh, we will have them for Thanksgiving. But also I think it's important to start new traditions, and knowing that starting new traditions does not mean that you're leaving your loved one behind. And that was something that I kind of struggled with at first, of being like, I want to do things like, I definitely would like to travel more during the holidays and be like in a new environment. But at first, I think that I know there was a part of me that thought that in a way, I might be leaving kind of this loved one behind by starting a new tradition that they're not a part of. And that's really not the case. It's great to start new traditions and new things to look forward to. You know what I mean? And I think that happiness, that joy really allows that room for that loved one spirit to come in. And you're not leaving them behind, because, of course, you're always carrying them with you, whether you're having an active moment where you really feel like you feel their presence, or you're talking about them or not. And so they're going to be with you. And when you allow that space, I feel like you allow their spirit to come in and enjoy those moments with you too. So starting new memories, starting I know someone who lost their cousin on New Year's Eve. It was a horrible, horrible case. And I remember a year ago I saw that they were just went out, it's like casino, with their boo, you know what I'm saying? They were saying they were intentionally trying to start new memories, you know what I mean? So that that day wasn't something that was just, you know, just an awful, 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 awful day. And when the days that are on top of being the hardest, I feel like for holidays, I also think too, like their anniversary, the anniversary of when they pass is also something I'm gonna let you know right now. If you can take that day off. I know so many people, and I've done this myself, where sometimes you're not even really fully consciously aware, like you know it's coming up, but you're like in the moment you might feel okay. And so you're like, I'm just gonna go to work and you think it'll be all right. But I myself talking from my experience, other people's experience, like most people always end up going home because you don't really know how you're gonna feel until that day. You're like, man, I just can't do it. Take care of yourself, take the day off, do what you gotta do. Another thing that I kind of want to leave this with, and I definitely encourage people who maybe do not have folks to share the holiday with, you know what I mean, or even if you do, giving back, like I had mentioned, serving food at a shelter is a great way to not only be with. I don't know what just happened, though. You know, it's always something. This is why I be telling you, I can't do this. I can't do this. But I'm back. You see, it was quick though. I got it together quick. Cause boom. Okay, cause boom. I was on a roll too. Ooh, I was in my bag. What was I saying? Oh, giving back. Oh, it's a great way to feel to really get that fulfillment and sense of community. You know, one of the first when I really knew that the work I do now basically was going to be a part of my life as far as when it comes to community work and being of service was when I was a kid. I was probably like 7 years old, and I was in an organization called the Junior Daughters of St. Peter Claver. Shout out to St. Peter Claver. I know so many people in St. Paul either went to St. Peter Claver School, been to St. Peter the church as a member. Like everyone knows St. Peter Claver, Black Catholic Church here in St. Paul, and we, you know, a lot of part of the Catholic faith is about putting faith in action. It's about giving back and it's about community service. There's not any type of organization within the Catholic Church, whether it's, well, I could name a lot, but all of them have to do with service. And so they used to take us down to volunteer and serve food at what was called the Dorothy Day Center. And that was a shelter that was down in I guess what you would call a soup kitchen downtown St. Paul. And I was, like I said, 7 years old. We went on a Saturday afternoon and we served them, I believe, like lunch. Y'all, I cannot tell you, and I don't even know why, but it was just something that was so fulfilling about that experience and like knowing that I was doing something that could possibly put a smile on someone's face who maybe was going through. These are the things I'm thinking at 7 years old, okay? And it was so fulfilling. I remember being like, I want to do this again. You know, I want to keep doing this. And I've even thought this year, the things where I feel like, man, like, I need to add something back in my life. Like sometimes I'd be feeling, you know, maybe not as fulfilled as I feel like I could feel. I'm like, what's what am I lacking? Usually it has to do with church in my faith, because that has been such a core of my life in service. And so I myself drove past I was in St. Paul, you know, here in Minnesota. For those of you who don't live here who are listening, and I saw some people lined up outside a building, and I was like, "Oh, there must be some type of shelter." I was looking at the time that it was. I'm like, "Okay, they must be lined up, whether it's to get a room or to get a meal." And I was like, "I should look in, see, you know, what place this is, or you know, what have you." And see if they need, you know, any volunteers and stuff like that. Because I definitely feel like I'm needing that. I'm lacking that, you know, and I need that type of fulfillment in my life right now. Okay. So we have gone through a lot of things in like 20 minutes. Okay. That's how I like to do things. Okay. Okay. We're straight to the point. Okay. Keep it simple, sweet. You know, that KISS acronym also stands for keep it simple, stupid. But anyway, so We've gone through now. Okay, we're talking about going through that tunnel. Okay, it sucks when you're in it, but you will get to the other side and feel like you can breathe again. Again, knowing that it's okay if you're not okay on those holidays, if you're not okay approaching those holidays, and if you're in those holidays, take it. I would say moment by moment. You know what I mean? Almost day on the day of, check in with yourself, see how you're feeling, and go with the flow. When you feel those moments of grief, don't be afraid to sit in them. Okay, sit in them, drilling it out, scream it out, cry it out. If you have friends you can, which I pray you do, can call on for support. Call on them. And get that out of your system. It's so important to get it out, but not to run away from it. And give yourself a grace and love that loved one who you're missing will give to you. Release the pressure to make things perfect. Release the pressure of trying to make the present the past, right? Because it's not the same anymore, right? And we got to start now. you know they always say like depression is about dwelling on the past, anxiety is about worrying about the future. And so we have to really make that effort to really be in the now, and not focus on trying really hard to overcompensate for now the loss, or making it as if trying to make the same vibe basically as if that person is there. Um and don't be afraid to hold on to traditions from when the person was physically here on this earth, and also to start new traditions with those who are physically here on this earth. Don't be afraid. Like I know me and my mom the past couple years we've definitely been had. I think last year we had like apple cider mimosas, like Christmas drinks or whatever. And I think maybe we had a holiday movie going on. And for us, I'm used to Christmases where before it was my mom and aunt would be doing and cooking, they'd be in the kitchen and stuff. And so now it's mainly my mom, because y'all, I be trying to volunteer to cook stuff, but she always ended up putting me out. So, but it was nice last year to have like just the drinks, kind of have this, cheers moment. I think we may have had little pastries or something like that, you know what I mean? And then just like chilled out. And something that maybe like that seems maybe small is actually big. It actually becomes big. It's like a lot of things, those small moments. Even last year on the auntie's angel versary, we went to her gravesite, and then we also went out to the Cheesecake Factory after that, because that was actually the last meal that we had, like as a family, sit down meal we had as a family. And so, like things like that. So starting these new traditions, starting things where you can honor people in the past, but also find things that you can look forward to in the present and the future. So I hoped all those tidbits helped. If you're watching on the screen, you see that I have this article up from blackhealthmatters.com, and it says 5 ways to handle grief during the holidays. It's pretty much everything that I was just saying. Okay. Okay, but I said it before I even read the article. I do want to also mention there are a couple of things that I was seeing that I thought were good, because it also talked about other things that add to stress during and anxiety during the holidays. You know what I mean? Financial things. It's oof. I know I'm stressing about finances during this time. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I don't know how I'm gonna be able to do it. Okay, so there's a lot of that type of stress. Stressing that to have this perfect, Christmas. You know what I mean? And you're buying all these different things. So there's a lot of other things that can add to it. And I really saw like, planning things out as far as what you can and what you can't do. What is it that you really realistically can get done and accomplish, all the things that you think that want to accomplish during this time of year, whether it's realistically to your budget, make sure that it's realistic to your capacity, things like that, setting certain schedules and making sure you know what's going on. My mom be having her whole months planned out, okay, and she has it on a calendar where she can just look right at it and see it. And so things like that, you just kind of keep yourself on task and organized. There were some other things they're talking about, like, of course, getting enough sleep and eating a healthy diet, but I couldn't come out here and tell y'all that because I don't do that. Okay. But we baby steps, okay, micro steps, that's what you got to do. Okay. So thank you all so much for tuning into Miss Mark Live in the morning. I will have this piece up on my YouTube channel so you can get these tidbits just right in this short form format with just this part of the conversation. I also plan to have my headlines and stuff up there too, so you can stay on top of what you need to know. And you can tune in next Friday to Miss Margaret Live. I do want to let you know that the week of Thanksgiving, I will not be live on that Friday. Also, I just got my office space, which I ain't been back in since I got it, but I have not started reporting in that space because, there's certain things I still got to get the space set up. Ain't nothing really in it but a random couch, the last person left behind, which is dope. Okay, because somebody ain't got to buy. But I actually next week is Give to the Max week. I think the week after that is Giving Tuesday. So by Giving Tuesday, I will definitely have my list up so you all can attend my virtual open house through Amazon. Okay. And you can help me furnish this thing on studio so we can get things up and running and also get people in it who also want to use the space to record their own podcasts and shows like this. So make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel and you follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. We'll be back next Friday with more headlines and, of course, our in-depth conversations on Miss Margaret Live in the morning. Bye.